Chapter 3 A Crossed Line. After the blast hit the portal and shattered it into a million pieces, Luce's and Amity's entire friend group stood frozen in shocked silence for a second. Nobody could quite grasp what had just happened. Where had that blast even come from? For a moment, Ida just focused on using wind magic to lead the smoke out the door. Afterwards, they could all really see the damage that had been done by the blast. And it was major. "Well, that door's busted all right," Ida stated the obvious after a moment, breaking the silence. That was an understatement, since the splinters of the door were scattered all across the room, and there was nothing left that would have indicated that the remains had once been a portal to another realm to someone that hadn't previously known it. Does that mean they can't come back? King was panicking, holding on to his part of the friendship necklace tightly as he ran up to where the door had been. It couldn't mean that, right? Luce and Amity couldn't be gone for good. The others exchanged a worried look at what King had just said. They'd been too shocked by what had happened to even think about what it could mean before this moment. But now that he mentioned it, "Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the situation is more severe than just uh-oh, Edric," Amira mumbled. She felt numb. This was bad. This was really, really, really bad. Sure, she liked teasing Amity occasionally. Amity was her little sister after all, and she and Edric had taken it too far a bunch of times. But that didn't mean they didn't love her. Messing with each other was a normal thing all siblings did, but that didn't mean Amira wasn't 100% ready to throw hands if anyone hurt Amity or Edric. And the thought of Amity being trapped in another realm, maybe forever, scared and possibly hurt, Amira shuddered. Each and every fight they'd ever had was suddenly forgotten, and all she wanted was to hold her little sister in her arms again.
Starting fires inside houses is really dangerous! Hoot hoot!
Hootie had wrapped around someone again, and a few seconds later, he dropped Lilith to the floor of the living room. Ida narrowed her eyes to slits. "Lilith." "Hello, Idalyn." Ida immediately took hold of her staff. "We should take this outside." She didn't wait for an answer, and just blasted her sister backwards out the door again, growling. She didn't mind meeting Lilith under normal circumstances, especially since most of their fights were of a more friendly nature. But as soon as Luce got involved, the fun ended. Lilith had crossed a line this time. Willow just stood in the doorframe with her mouth agape for a few seconds. Whoa, I don't think I've ever seen her this angry before. "Ida can be pretty terrifying when she wants to be," King commented as he joined the others to watch the fight. Lilith had picked herself up off the ground and raised her own staff. "Why did you do it? What did Luce ever do to you?" Ida was the only one that could fully grasp what it meant that the portal was gone, since none of the others really knew how long it had taken her to create this portal in the first place. And that Luce wouldn't be able to come back wasn't even the worst part of it. Despite the fact that Ida was livid about that, and despite knowing that Luce was going to be crushed to an extent that Ida didn't even want to think about, because if she did, she'd start crying. She knew Luce would have no trouble surviving in the realm she'd grown up in. She wouldn't be happy, but she'd manage. Amity, however, was a different story. Lilith dodged another one of her sister's blasts as she answered, readying herself to return fire. "Bellows gave me a choice. He told me to get rid of Luce one way or another, and I did. Now everyone's back in the realm they belong in. Nobody got hurt, and Luce is forever out of danger. It's best for everyone involved this way." Lilith knew she'd done the right thing. Luce didn't belong here, and she'd spent the summer almost dying more times than Lilith could count. Life here wasn't safe for a fragile human like Luce. And being locked out of a realm she didn't belong in was a fate way better than what the Emperor had in mind for Luce when he'd first tasked Lilith with taking care of the human girl.
Keep telling yourself that, Lily.
Ida glared daggers at her sister. Oh, and solid job unlocking your own protege out of the Boiling Isles, by the way. What are you talking about? Amity went through the door after Luce, Amira chimed in. Her voice was scarcely monotone. Now she's trapped on the other side of the portal you just destroyed. A part of Amira still felt numb, unable to grasp entirely what had just happened and what it meant. But there was a rage boiling under the surface, and it was just waiting for the right moment to boil over. Knowing who was responsible for what had happened made everything so much worse. Amira knew that Amity looked up to Lilith in a way she did to no one else. Lilith was her mentor, her hero, and maybe even a bit like a mother to her. Knowing that she was the one responsible for locking Amity out of this realm, trapping her far away from the only home she'd ever known, as well as possibly hurting her, that was too much. If Amity found out, her whole life would fall apart. Emra felt sick just thinking about it.
What?
Lilith was so stunned about what the young witch had just said that she froze where she was standing rather than dodging Ida's next blast, which, as a result, sent her flying backwards into a tree. That's right. Not only did you mess up my kid's life, you also managed to mess up the one kid you've been mentoring. Kill two witches with one fire spell, so to say. That was another one of Luce's weird sayings that Ida had picked up from her kid during the last few months. Humans said a lot of weird things, but some of them really stuck with Ida when Luce said them. She was a good kid, and Ida would already have missed her terribly without the added factor of her not being able to return, and it just fueled her anger even more. Lilith talking about how righteous everything she did was and how she just wanted what was best for everyone usually merely annoyed Ida a bit. But that she was somehow trying to portray this as doing the right thing was taking it too far. Ida had seen the light in Luce's eyes when she'd cast a spell for the first time, how her face lit up each time she learned a new spell, how she smiled when she could show off her abilities. Luce had been dreaming of the life she had here for as long as she could remember, and everyone here knew that. She'd worked incredibly hard to get to as far as she's gotten, and nobody was allowed to take that away from her. By now, the others had come out of the house after Emra, all of them standing with a bit of distance to Lilith and Ida as they watched the fight. Well, except for the twins, who seemed unbothered by the amount of spells tossed in both directions as they drew closer.
Are you happy now? Do you have any idea how much it would crush Amity to know what you just did? Would you even care?
This was it. Emra lost it completely.
Nobody is allowed to mess with our little sister, except us, got it?
Edric growled as he stepped next to his sister, arms crossed. Lilith had finally picked her jaw and herself back off the floor just in time to deflect Ida's next blast. Why would Amity do that? She was still in a state of shock, unable to process everything.
Does it matter? Do you think you'll feel any better about what you did if we tell you?
Edric glared at her.
Besides, it's not like the fact that Amity cares about Luce is some well-kept secret. The entire school knows. Why do you think she was here to say goodbye in the first place? Willow shouted from behind them.
She hadn't wanted to get into the middle of the fight, but she couldn't stop herself from shouting at Lilith. How anyone could be this ignorant and divorced from reality was beyond her.
Do you actually know anything about Amity? Yeah, what she said, King added, his tiny fist raised angrily. If anything happened to them, you will feel my wrath!
Edric and Emra shared a glance, then nodded at each other and cast a spell together. Multiple versions of them popped up around everyone, and each illusion copy was staring daggers at Lilith. Ida nodded at the teens. While I approve of all the unnecessary efforts you two put into staring my sister down, you kids need to scram. All of you. This isn't your fight, and I don't need anyone to get caught in the crossfire. Got it? Lilith shook her head as she deflected another one of her sister's blasts back at her. This is ridiculous, Edelyn. I'm just here to arrest you. We both know I'd never hurt any of these kids. Yeah, you're right, Ida said, her voice distant and cold instead of the teasing tone she normally used around Lilith. Up until a few moments ago, I thought I knew that. Lilith had no reply for that. The words got stuck in her throat, and what was worse was that she couldn't even blame Ida for what she was saying, knowing what had happened to Amity. Lilith had really messed up, and she couldn't deny that, as much as she wanted to. You've gone too far this time, Lily. Ida sent the next blast of fire that her sister aimed at her back no problem. Lilith dodged. How does it feel knowing that? I know you could have found some way to excuse the thing with Luce, but Amity? Do you know how powerful her parents are? You'll be in big trouble when Bells hears about this. Do you think that's the only thing I care about? Considering you were willing to destroy Luce's life just because this bonehead told you to? Can you really blame me? Ida shot back immediately. A part of her wanted to hurt Lilith, really hurt her, for what she had just done, but she didn't. She couldn't. Even amidst her feelings of pure rage, she couldn't bring herself to hurt her sister. You don't understand anything, do you, Edelyn? I was just trying to protect Luce. Lilith hadn't wanted to involve Amity in this whole mess, and she'd do anything in her power to get her back to the right realm once she returned to the Emperor's castle. But she was still convinced that what she'd done was best for the human. Protect her? You've got to be kidding me! You're not even fooling yourself with the nonsense that's coming out of your mouth right now, are you? Upon realizing that Luce's friends were still standing around them and that the twins were even actively about to get themselves involved in the fight, Emra especially looked like a witch ready to throw hands if Ida had ever seen one. Ida shifted her focus to them for a few seconds. I mean it, kids. Get out of here before you get hurt. King, that includes you. The King of Demons raised his voice in protest. But Ida glared at him, and he went quiet immediately. That wasn't meant as a choice. Willow, I'm counting on you to be the sane one. Please, don't disappoint me. Get the others out of here. Willow sighed. You got it. She grabbed hold of Gus, ushered King back inside the owl house, and then went to figure out which versions of the twins were the real ones so she could drag them after her as well. When she did, she was met with immediate protest. You can't! We have to! Amity needs... Willow was having none of it. The only thing Amity needs right now is you two not accidentally getting yourselves killed. We'll find a way to get her back. But it won't help anyone if you two end up dead before we do. I've seen Ida fight before. She's got this, as long as we don't get in her way. Willow's voice was stern, and she wasn't sure when exactly she'd accidentally become the mama of the group. But Ida was right. At least one of them had to be the responsible one. Now, you can either come willingly, or I'll use my vines to drag you after me. Your choice. That's not really a choice, Ektrick started, but Willow didn't even let him finish. The vines it is. Lilith raised her voice again, causing Ida to spin around once more. You're lucky I didn't tell anyone your location and just waited for this to happen instead. If any of the other Coven members had found Luce, death would have been the merciful option. That got Ida's attention all right. What? Bellows wants Luce gone, Edelyn. She's powerful, and because she works with you, he sees her as a threat. If I hadn't locked her out of this realm, she would have been killed by another Coven member or captured and tortured. Emperor's orders. Ida felt sick. She's a child!
Do you think that matters to him? Lilith yelled. I did you a favor by destroying that portal.
No. What you really did was take the easy way out, Ida scowled.
I can't believe you're still willing to work for someone who gives these kind of orders. Aren't you supposed to protect the next generation of witches, you hypocrite? I don't have a choice, Lilith yelled back at her.
Every word out of her sister's mouth made Ida angrier. She was willing to face the Emperor himself for daring to mess with her kid, and that her sister was still working under him despite what she just told Ida, and that she was somehow still trying to portray what she had done as something good and right just made her even angrier.
Does telling yourself that make you feel better?
Lilith reflected another blast, but it was obvious that her head wasn't really in the fight anymore. The blast landed far from where she'd aimed. Gus flinched and hid behind a willow when the blast hit a tree a little too close to them for comfort. And it seemed that now, even the twins had understood just how dangerous it could be to get in the way of this fight. Ida and Lilith were arguably the two most powerful witches on the Boiling Isles after all. Finally, the four young witches started moving. They'd all stood there frozen for a few seconds, too shocked to move because of what Lilith had just revealed. But the tree catching fire had snapped them out of their state of shock immediately. They shared a look and started running. It was high time to get out of there. For a few minutes, all four of them just ran as fast as their legs could carry them, without a set goal except away from the fight, until eventually they stopped to catch their breath. Well, that was terrifying, Gus mumbled after breathing in and out for a few seconds. The twins exchanged a look. And we thought the sleep spell she did on the slither beast was impressive, Edric whistled. Yeah, she's really strong, Willow agreed. And I get that you two are angry. I really do. So am I. Lucy and Amity mean the world to me. But getting caught in the crossfire won't help get them back. Gus looked at her. He was a bit at loss with the situation. So, what do we do now? How do we get them back without the portal? Willow thought for a moment. Logically speaking, we can't get them back onto the Isles if we don't have a portal for them to step through. Meaning, we either had to find a way to fix the one that Lilith destroyed, which means difficult because of how little remains of it, or we have to create a new one. Emra sighed. And the only one that we know that might know how to do that is Ida, who is currently kind of busy. Willow nodded. We'll meet back at the Owl House tomorrow to discuss our next steps with her. In the meantime, act normal. The fewer people that know about this, the better. Edric, Emra, can you two cover for Amity today? The twins nodded. I don't think that'll be very hard. If she doesn't show up to dinner, our parents will probably just assume she fell asleep in the library again. Good. There's something unreadable in Willow's expression. I just don't want her to get in trouble with them. Don't worry, we got this. And when push comes to shove, we can always do this. Edric drew a small blue circle in front of him to create an illusion of Amity, just to make it disappear again a few seconds later. See? Gus looked a little doubtful about that part of the plan. Don't you think your parents will notice that's not actually their daughter? The look on everyone's faces made him close his mouth again really quickly. Suddenly, the others seemed bent on changing the topic. So, what are you guys going to do for the rest of the day? Edric's attempt to lighten the mood didn't really work and just made everyone even more tense. He rubbed his eyes. Titan, this is one messed up situation, huh? Willow sighed. Tell me about it. I can't stop thinking about Luce and Amity and what might have happened to them. I just hope they're not hurt, she murmured. Amity hadn't been out the door for that long before it combusted, and since she'd closed it, they didn't know if she'd still been close enough to it to be hurt by the explosion. Willow wasn't sure how the door exploding in one realm would affect the other realm, but since it connected the two, it had to exist in both to at least some extent, meaning that the explosion might have and probably had affected both sides of the portal. That thought worried her. Emra scowled. If there's so much as a scratch on Mittens because of what happened, I'm going to kill Lilith. I don't care how powerful she thinks she is. If she hurt my little sister, she'll pay. Edric nodded and clenched his fists. I'm right there with you, Em. She won't know what hit her. Like I said, I get it. But I think right now our focus should be more on restoring the portal to save Amity and to make sure Luce can come back here again anytime she wants. Gus sighed and looked at Willow with a mixture of worry and fear in his eyes. Do you guys really think that we'll be able to get them back? Willow smiled a little. Of course. We're stubborn, aren't we? Especially when it comes to helping our friends. Maybe it's time for us to solve a problem with a good attitude and a dope music soundtrack and Luce's name for a change. That lifted the mood a little, until suddenly Emra's mind wandered back to the last thing they'd heard before leaving the two adults behind, and her expression darkened again. So, who's going to break it to Amity that the coven she's wanted to join since she was a little kid is planning to do with a girl she loves? Meanwhile, the fight between the two Clawthorne sisters was drawing to a close. Two more blasts, and Ida was finished with her sister. Lilith was tired out so much that she collapsed to the ground against a tree, unable to try and cast another spell if she wanted to. But she didn't even try. They were relatively far away from the owl house now. Ida had drawn the fight further and further away from her home at every opportunity to make sure King and Hootie were safe. Idalyn, you have to understand. I was just trying to... What? Protect her? Protect me? Ida walked up to her sister and grabbed her by the collar. Are you still trying to justify what you did? Luce was never happy at home. But she was happy here, and you took that away from her. You crushed a kid's dream and talk about it like it's something to be proud of. And you messed up Amity's life in the process. The girl you were mentoring. The one you were supposed to protect. She was shaking with rage, so filled with adrenaline that she didn't even feel how tired out she herself was. It would catch up to her soon enough. But for now, she was too angry to feel anything else. You know nothing about the human realm. Do you have any idea how dangerous it is there for someone like her? She trusted you! Amity was a good kid. She deserved better than her terrible parents. She deserved better than a mentor who was careless enough to ruin her life by accident. Once again, Lilith's words got stuck in her throat and nothing came out. But even if it had, her sister didn't give her a chance to say anything. No, this time you'll listen, Ida growled, lifting her sister a bit higher and looking her straight in the eyes. You always believed you're doing the right thing, no matter how in the wrong you are. And I'm so incredibly tired of hearing that over and over and over again. You've been trying to save me for such a long time now, to help me get back on the right track. There was poison in Ida's words. Lilith had had her fair share of fights with her sister in the past, both as kids and as adults. But she couldn't remember ever seeing Ida this angry before. Maybe I'm not the one who lost her way, Lily. Maybe I'm the one who still saw clearly after they'd forced you into blind obedience. Maybe that's why I ran. Maybe I saw what they were doing to you, and when I tried to pull you out of their grasp and failed, I knew the only thing left for me to do was run. But you never stopped to think about that, did you? You were so busy trying to save me that you never considered you could be the one that needs saving. Ida let go of her sister's collar and dropped her to the ground. When she spoke again, the poison in her words were gone, replaced by the one possible thing that was worse: disappointment. You ruined the lives of 2 kids today. I hope you're proud of yourself, Lily." And just like that, Ida was gone, and Lilith was alone in the woods, her surroundings void of noise except for the cold autumn breeze of the aisles that circulated around her, her sister's voice still ringing in her ears. End of chapter 3.